Some of you out there a few weeks back might have seen this particular clip here. It's from the Mission Blue vlog that I did, which was where myself, Robert Mark Lehman, and Gonzo headed off out of Penzance to do some epic research with blue sharks. But on one of the days that we were out together, I had this interaction with a female blue shark. Now, even though it was a really minor incident, that blue shark did indeed bite my freediving fins with some force. But I thought it might be kind of cool today to break down some of the behavioral interactions that led this blue shark to do what it did. Because there are a few things going on under the surface here that if you just watch the video on the face of it, you'd never know were happening. Anyway, welcome back to another Shark Bytes episode, everyone. Right, before we start here, I just want to point out that while on rare occasions, blue sharks are capable of causing harm to humans, the shark in the clip that we're going to be looking at today caused me zero harm whatsoever. I'm not going to sit here and try and exaggerate to you guys what happened and be like, oh my god, I was attacked by a blue shark and I was lucky to come out alive, because that would just be silly, and that wasn't what happened. And if you're new to Shark Bytes and you sat there thinking, who's this weird British dude claiming that he knows about shark behavior and shark attacks, I'm a scientist who has for many years worked with sharks in the field and in the lab, and I've also written peer-reviewed research papers on shark behavior and shark attacks. So it's up to you as to whether you want to believe what I have to say, but just know that I'm not sat here in my studio making it up. Now, without doubt, in my years of working with these animals, the shark species that I've spent the most time in the water with is blue sharks. I'd say whale sharks and nurse sharks do come in at a close second, but considering I live in England, in coastal Cornwall, where blue sharks are summer seasonal visitors every year, I've been lucky enough to spend a fair whack of time in the water with them. I've been snorkeling with these sharks now since way before I started Shark Bytes. I think the first time I got in the water with them was like 2016. And I've done research assistant work with some other scientists from Plymouth looking at DNA stuff, as well as bycatch reduction research using magnets. And that paper has literally just come out, so make sure you go and give it a read. But even though I've spent a lot of in-water hours with these sharks, you get to learn over time that every interaction is different, right? You've got different numbers of sharks that are around you, different sizes, different personalities, but you've also got different environmental conditions as well, like sea state or underwater visibility. So because of those things, no two encounters are the same. But I do have to say, not once in all the years that I've spent in the water with this shark species have I ever been on the receiving end of a bite, either to my body or to my gear. And it does happen. We know it happens. There was a female snorkeler back a couple of years ago now that got bitten, and there was another incident as well this summer that you won't have heard about, where a man was bitten in water on his arm by a blue shark. The man who was on the receiving end of that bite this last summer has sent the video to me, and he's given me the all clear to make a video if I think it's worthwhile, so stay tuned for that one. Now, I think when you spend a lot of time in the water with a certain shark species, there could be the tendency there to maybe get a little bit complacent. I've always tried my best to not get complacent, but it can occasionally creep in. And I'll be the first to hold my hands up here and say a little bit of complacency on my part here has played a role. But there were some other factors, as well as some really intricate behavioral factors going on as well, which we'll cover in a minute. So on the day itself, conditions weren't perfect. And when I say perfect there, I would class perfect conditions to be calm, flat waters with really good underwater visibility. And for any of you that watched the full vlog, you'll see that on this day there was a bit of swell. When the wind picks up from the south or southwest down here in Cornwall, you'll get bigger offshore choppy swells, which just makes everything twice as hard, both on the boat and in the water. I think I remember Fred, our boat captain for the day, saying that he would normally have a few reservations about putting tourists in the water, even with a guide, on a day with conditions like we had. But myself, Rob, and Nico have all been in the water with blue sharks and a whole host of other sharks before, so you could probably say that we were a little bit more experienced than your average Joe in adverse conditions like that. Saying that still though, even for more experienced people, it doesn't mean it's easy. It just means we're slightly more aware of how we as the outsider has to behave in the water with the sharks. So just having a quick look then for some extra context, we've got 3 people in the water. We've got the bait box out here, which is a sort of floating basket that's got bits of chopped up fish inside it, of which the sharks can't really get into, but the oils and the small bits of fish can escape through the gaps and into the surrounding water. Now, the bait box is the thing that initially draws the sharks in, and then when you're in the water, it's the thing that keeps them interested so they don't just swim off straight away. And then finally, you've got the line here, which is the rope that connects the bait box to the boat, and it means that that bait box doesn't just float off out into the Atlantic. And importantly, it also means that we as the snorkelers can use it to make sure that we don't float off into the Atlantic as well. You can see then across some of these clips here that all 3 of us will use that rope every now and again to move a little bit closer back to the boat and try and make sure that we stick together as a group. But on the days we've got a little bit more more swell, it does mean that you are continually getting pushed closer towards that bait box there, which has got those tiny bits of fish and really nice smelling things that the sharks are interested in. Essentially, you don't really want to be anywhere near that bait box because that's the zone where the sharks are getting quite fired up in and their senses are just being stimulated by all that fish and oil. Now, when we first got in the water, we had 2 female blue sharks hanging around us. The first one was a big shark, probably at least 2 meters, maybe even a little bit more. And then the second one was a slightly smaller individual that was about 1.5 meters-ish. And these 2 sharks were pretty chill. Like you can see here, we'd have a few occasional passes underneath us, but for the most part, they were keeping their distance, generally hanging around that bait box. But relatively quickly, we had a third shark show up. Again, another female. This female here was still a decent sized shark, but she was just a little bit smaller than that 2-meter one that was already there. I'd say she was probably about 1.9 meters, but it's tough to tell that exactly. You can see her right here, and for ease of narration, we'll call her the intermediate shark. And I know it's really tricky to tell that they are different sizes from this shot, but this one here was just a little bit smaller than the one behind it down here. And when she arrived, the entire dynamic of the encounter changed. It wasn't this relatively chilled out experience anymore. They were much more interested in us. Now, after I came out of the water, after the experience in the vlog at the time, I said this.
Couple of big blue sharks there, super confident, really interested in the camera, really interested in my fins. That one female in particular, at least over 2 meters in length, she was well up for it today. She was so confident. That is the most confident blue shark that I have ever swum with before. She was right up in the grill.
So at the time, I thought it was the 2-meter plus female that was the most confident one, the shark that was getting right up in my grill. But looking back at the footage really closely, I was wrong. The most confident shark of the 3 of them was the intermediate shark, the one that was just a touch smaller than the biggest one. From Nico's camera angle here, you can see the intermediate shark was getting a lot more interested in our cameras. So she swims right up towards his, and that nictitating membrane is just twitching upwards as she's protecting her eye. And then he just uses his camera gently to move her onwards, and I do the same with mine, as well as giving her a really gentle push with the side of my fin. Sometimes in a situation like this, a push with your fins or a gentle nudge with your camera is enough to send that shark on its way. Anyway, then we've got it from my camera angle here as well, but if I just pause it here, we get a really subtle identifying feature just here. So our intermediate shark has got 3 little black dots on her head in a diagonal line. 1, 2, 3. But blue sharks coming up to cameras like this isn't particularly uncommon. You'll have seen them probably doing it to lots of people before. They are super inquisitive sharks that are likely very interested in the electrical signals coming from our cameras. I've had them do it to me a bunch of times. Now, if we just play the clip on a little bit further forwards, we realise that we're probably a little bit too close to that bait box, so we use the line to guide us back towards the boat, and as we do, we clock those sharks coming back in for another pass. So in my head, I've got my eyes on what I think is the bigger, bolder shark down here, and at the time I'm thinking this is the one that's getting a bit pushy, so I'm going to track her across to the right-hand side, and I've made an error here that I've not got my eyes on the other shark. So our bigger female here has made a slight movement towards me and my eyes are just fixed on her, but I don't spot from the right here the intermediate shark coming in, and she just clocks me on the tip of my right fin. And if I pause it for you, we know that this is the intermediate shark because we can see those 3 little black dots in a diagonal line across the top of her head. This is the same shark that was getting pushy with our cameras 30 seconds previously. So the question is, behaviorally, what's going on here? Because normally you might expect that the bigger shark would be the one that was bolder or more aggressive. Well, when this encounter changed from 2 sharks to 3 sharks, and it all started heating up a bit, what we had going on here was a hierarchical challenge. Back when it was just the 2 of them, the smaller of those 2 sharks knew its place in the pecking order. A blue shark that's over 2 meters in length is going to be the more dominant female over the shark that's 1.5 meters. But when the 3rd shark joined the fray, who was a little bit closer in size to the biggest individual, she was then challenging the dominance of that larger female. In sharks, and other wild predators to be fair, sometimes the hierarchical challenge isn't a challenge between 2 individuals. The challenge is how you're behaving with everything else around you, including us as the snorkelers. The intermediate shark, who's just that little bit smaller, who also wants to challenge the hierarchy, feels like she needs to prove herself or prove her dominance over the entire situation. So that means she's a little bit pushier, a little bit bolder, and more willing to make those riskier movements, which included biting me on my fin. When I first looked back at the footage, I did wonder whether this was more of an exploratory bite because my fins are blue and they've got bits of white on them, especially that right-hand side there where it just catches the sunlight. So I thought maybe she was was coming in thinking, oh yeah, that's a bit of fleshy white fish that's come free from the bait box, so I'll have a go at it. But I've never had issues with these fins and sharks before. I've been around tons of blue sharks and been wearing them. I've been around Caribbean reef sharks, tiger sharks, and I've never had an individual shark be that interested in my fin. I think as well, the actual duration of the bite was different too. So if it was an explorative bite, we'd have maybe expected her to thrash from side to side slightly, but she didn't. It was a quick, forceful nip and then she was off. And that was why I started to question whether there might have been a different behavioral motivation for it. And personally, looking back at that footage, I think there was. I think it was hierarchy based, and if we were to put that into our shark bite classifications, that would be a territoriality or dominance bite. That blue shark right there was giving us, or me, a warning that she wasn't massively happy and was trying to prove her dominance or defend her territory in that situation. There's no doubt part of this was down to me here too. I've definitely got to hold my hands up because I've lost sight of that shark, even just for 5 seconds. I'm focusing too much on the one shark here that I think is the bigger one, and I've not been focusing on the slightly smaller individual that's trying to prove itself. It did remind me though that no matter how many times you've been in the water with these animals, different behaviors or different environmental conditions are at play, so you've absolutely got to have your wits about you at all times. After that little warning bite there though, the three of us realised that with that choppy, wavy swell and those sharks maybe getting a bit feistier, it was starting to push the boundaries of a safe in-water encounter, so we got out the water. And that's where that experience comes in, where you turn around and go, yeah, this is pushing it a bit now, it's time to get back on the boat. And we didn't actually get back in the water with them again that day. That was it. What do you guys think then? In your opinion, was that a dominance territorial thing, or do you think she was exploring my fin thinking it might have been a food item? I want to hear all your thoughts in the comments below. If you haven't watched that full vlog yet, please do go and check it out. It's nearly 30 minutes long, and a lot of time and effort goes into making those longer in the field videos. If you guys want me to make more of them, you got to show me that by watching them, so please do go and check it out here. We were doing some awesome science in that video, and we even managed to get a really rare encounter with a poor beagle shark. So if you want to see that, give this video a click.